So from the future perspective, I think the right balance is not thinking of AI as complete automation of, oh, now we just have machine do end to end and you'll be hired just talking to machine, but finding machine assisted processes where human and machine is working together to while improve efficiency and reduce bias, but is also able to provide the human touch.
This is the Rebel HR Podcast, the podcast where we talk to HR innovators about all things people leadership. If you're looking for places to find about new ways to think about the world of work, this is the podcast for you. Please subscribe from your favorite podcast listening platform today and leave us a review. Rebel on, HR Rebels. Welcome back, Rebel HR listeners. Extremely excited for the conversation today. We are going to be talking about AI and HR and how those two things can work together. With us today, we have Sameer Maskey. He is the CEO of Fusemachines and an AI professor at Columbia University. Welcome to the show, Sameer. Thank you.
Thank you for having me here, Kyle.
Well, I'm really excited for this. I think this is one of those topics where I saw your background and I saw some of the work you're doing, and I just had to talk to you because admittedly, this is an area that I am very undereducated in. And so
I was going to say the same thing, Kyle. So I'm glad it's not just me.
So I'm just fascinated. And Molly, thankfully, is here to ask the good questions. But before we get into that, I want to understand, what got you into the world of AI and ultimately into how AI and HR can work together?
My interest in AI, I think, started with some of the sci-fi movies on, computer talking to humans, natural language dialogue systems. So in college, I studied physics and math, and during that time, I started doing research in speech synthesis. So I built the first Nepali speech synthesizer. I grew up in Nepal, so I speak Nepali as well. And I ended up building Nepali speech synthesizer, so AI for language, and that's how my research interest in AI started. And I started doing more and more research on language and AI, and did my PhD in natural language processing and speech processing for summarization and so forth. And that's how I got started in the world of AI. Oh, and then the second part of the question, how I started doing work on particularly AI in HR world, right? So as I just mentioned, I came from academic background of just using AI for language. How do we build natural language processing system like question answering systems, dialogue systems, and so forth? And with that expertise of building machines to be able to read text, extract information, doing information extraction from text and so forth, has led on to a much better understanding of how we can upright some of the same technologies like information extraction from documents, where documents is actually resumes, right? And that's how we've ended up now doing more and more research on trying to figure out all possible applications of AI, particularly from both NLP and speech processing, on the end-to-end process of somebody applying to a job to getting hired, be it skills extraction from resumes, be it automatically scoring, interviews, trying to figure out the possible matching score between applicant and job descriptions and so forth. So we've been doing more and more research on this, and as a company, we've built more and more technologies around it, filed a bunch of patents around this as well, which now has transformed the company into these set of product lines on talent management platform and education platform with a lot of AI features.
No, I think it's really fascinating, and it does. I'm a big sci-fi fan as well. So, in fact, the Rebel HR thing, Rebel could mean a lot of different things, but in my nerd brain, it's like the Star Wars Rebels. It's like the people who are trying to change the world, and just a small band of rebels. Anyways, but so I totally get that. One of the questions I have on AI is kind of where we're at in the journey of AI, because it it always seems like when you read about it or you hear about it, it always seems like it's like some far off, distant thing in the future. But there's actually been a lot of work. So as you look at like the kind of the life cycle of AI and kind of where we're at in the journey, where are we and where do you see this really going as it relates to our world, specifically in human resources?
I think from overall development of AI and how useful it could be for real business use cases, now is the time. Finally, we're at the stage where it's a culmination of the accuracy of algorithm, the cost of storage and cost of storage and GPUs and compute power, and the amount of data that is available in the world, particularly the amount of data businesses themselves have about their products and customers. It's at this point where it is starting to make a real ROI for companies. And that's why I think we are suddenly seeing this explosion of applications of AI along product and services in companies, because they see real returns on investing on AI applications. So because of that, I think we are now in this even more explosive growth cycle where we will see more and more use cases of AI across many, many different industries and applications.
Yeah, it's came real fast. Like, I think we're at the point where it's here, but our laws and our policies aren't quite up to speed yet, which is something I think we're all kind of dealing with in HR. So you mentioned return on investment. Like, what are some of those that your organizations that you're working with are actually seeing?
So to give you an example, for example, a company that we worked with, we're building pricing prediction engines, right? They were trying to figure out, they sell the product across multiple geographies. And when they sell the same exact product, such as games, and you're trying to sell across multiple different geographies, you need to price them differently, but you still want to price it so that you're not leaving money on the table, right? And they were able to build a very good machine learning algorithm to figure out the optimal price across different geographies and increase their revenue. Another use case is a hospital trying to reduce cost and inventory by doing better implant prediction, so that they don't have to store all variations of implants for each surgery, but fewer implant sizes for each surgery. So many different use cases across different industries. A lot of them to do with predicting something that a lot of times either reduces costs or increases revenue.
We'll be back after a quick break.
And so used to having everything in front of them right away that we forget that innovation just takes time. I myself, I get frustrated too. Why? And you know, this is being one of my best friends is, hey, I talk to you all the time. Hey man, I'm frustrated in the fact that I can't seem to just get there in the next day. But that's just not how these things work, right? Innovation needs to be planned out. It needs to be very methodical. And then when it finally hits, that's when it seems like to everyone else that it sort of just came out of nowhere. But to you, you know the amount of dedication that it took over that time.
So I think it's fair to say, like, this is going to be the future, right? This is where computing is going. I think, especially in the HR realm, there's like a counter movement to AI, and it's like, put the human back in HR, these types of movements, which I think in many cases are correct and right. But as it relates to AI and as it relates to the future of technology, what's your vision of how those two things come together? That we don't lose kind of the humanity of work or the work that we do, but we also embrace AI. How do you see that in the future, Sameer?
It's about finding that right balance, right? I think with AI, you could automate a lot of stuff. and some of it have very good applications, such as I think AI could be used with a lot less bias. If we build a model right, then there could be a lot less bias in screening step, right? Humans, in humans in generally, depending on the background, all of that, we know several cases that we have seen even in news that there are these biases that humans have when they're screening resumes. But if we're able to build machines with a lot of unbiased data to model it, we could have a very unbiased machines that allows people to go through screening processes, right? But having said that, as you know, there might be questions that the candidates also want to ask to understand the nuances of the culture of the company and so forth. In which case, machines may have a hard time providing really good answers because machines not working alongside all the other people in the company. It will just spit back these answers that, you know, whoever modeled the data saying this is what the culture looks like. But it's very hard to relate. It's very hard for the machine to relate to the culture and be able to provide that very nuanced answer to the candidate that an HR person could be able to do with that human-to-human touch. So I think it's finding the right balance. And I think definitely there's advantages of using machines to automate, and then there are also definitely advantages of human being in the loop. So from the future perspective, I think the right balance is not thinking of AI as complete automation of, oh, now we just have machine do end-to-end and you'll be hired just talking to machine, but finding human-assisted system, machine-assisted processes where human and machine is working together to while improve efficiency and reduce bias, but is also able to provide the human touch.
Yeah, when I think of AI and HR, that's one of the first things that goes to my mind as well, is if we can eliminate some of the biases, that's a positive. Also, if it saves me time on some of the manual stuff, then I can focus on some of the bigger strategic HR stuff. And I think for me, it's also about just getting that data to become a better strategic partner. And I think that's one thing that HR can do better. And I think it's hard when we don't have the data. So I think AI can really help with that piece.
Yes. But we do have to worry about the quality of data and the bias in the data itself as well, right? So I'd seen this news where one of the banks used an AI system to screen for engineers, right? And they used the historical data, and historically, especially over the last whatever number of years, a lot of the engineers that got hired in the bank were male. So the machines automatically, the model builders didn't do anything to reduce that bias, just build the model based on the historical data. And the machines were just predicting and giving higher score in the screening steps to interview a lot of these male candidates. And so while it could be useful for reducing bias, we still need to be also aware that, especially in HR, like with most machine learning systems, a lot of historical data gets used, right? But especially in HR, when you use historical data, you need to do a deep dive to see if the data itself is very biased because of how it is collected and what the process looked like in hiring.
Yeah, so I was actually just reading this, and the advice in this article is that, when you're looking at these technologies and these companies, that HR, you really have to do your due diligence and ask the right questions about the program you're using, specifically regarding the biases and all of that stuff. But I think for me anyway, that is not my skill set. I wouldn't even know what questions to ask. So I guess for those HR folks like me, who that's not my skill set, what advice would you have for us when we are evaluating these companies and these tools?
Yeah. So I would say one of the big points I try to make across to the companies that are trying to deploy AI across different departments, be it HR and be it somewhere else, is collaboration, right? And like we are here for in the HR talking about HR. So for it applies the same thing, which is like there are engineers who are building the models, and they are the end users who are actually going to use it, right? So they are HR officers, HR administrators, HR managers who may not know much about AI, but they know all about HR processes, the biases that creep in, all the nuances about HR workflow. While there are engineers who know nothing about HR, but they just know how to build the models. And when a company just tries to take off-the-shelf tool, not have this collaboration across engineers and HR managers, and just build a process, that's when something like that would pop up, right? The news I just talked about. This probably the model builders built it. HR manager said, "Oh, this is ready. We'll use it. It's automating now. We just need to look at 5% of resumes. 95% is automated. Everybody's happy." But then then later on, after a lot of people are hired and used for many months, you see, "Oh, there's something's off here," right? So the biggest advice I would say is for any company when they're trying to implement AI in HR or be it in other departments, but particularly even in HR, you need collaboration of HR managers with AI engineers and model builders to make sure that engineers understand the nuances of HR process and workflow. At the same time, the HR managers are at least understanding the basics of how the machinery behind the scene is working. So they are able to ask interesting questions to engineers to make sure that the engineers are taking account of the nuances of the workflow and building the model accordingly.
I think it's so interesting, and it reminds me of going through, an implementation of a new, like an HR system or some sort of a system protocol where, the system is only as smart as how you program it, right? So it's like, so if you don't think about all of these, the nuance and the context of a system, and you take something that's just off the shelf, you're going to miss something. But I do think, to that point, HR does need to get educated on this so we can ask those right questions, right? Like I would not have thought, okay, if let's say an applicant tracking system came to me and said, "Hey, we have this AI solution to screen all your resumes. If you're looking for, an engineer, just put in all these skills that you want, and we'll top grade all the resumes." But I wouldn't think to ask the question, well, how do you specifically make sure that gender bias is not a part of that? That solution. Now I'm going to ask that question, right? But we need to be thinking about that, right?
Yeah, I'm so glad that you said that, because I think one of the concerns that a lot of us HR professionals have is that AI is going to eliminate our positions and just eliminate a lot of our job responsibilities. And what I just heard is that no, HR will actually play a big part in it, or they should play a big part in it. So really, they can't do it without us.
Yes, absolutely. I think this tight coupling between the HR managers, HR officers, along with the model builders from engineering side is super important to be able to create a lot of value out of applying AI in HR. But having said that, I would also like to say it's not like there wouldn't be any job losses. I would say as AI systems get more sophisticated and is able to automate big chunk of the process, there will be need for probably slightly smaller size teams. But that does not mean there will be no humans involved.
I think that's a great opportunity for all of us in HR to level up, to step up and do some of the higher level stuff.
I agree. I think it's interesting. So, obviously, Molly and I have spent our career staring at the job market and trying to figure out where are people and how do we match the right skills with this job and that job. And in my experience, whenever I've heard that the comment that, or the fear that something is going to come and take our jobs away, in general, that's a really great opportunity to take a look at what is the future going to look like? Because a lot of times there's some truth to that. For instance, there will be some job loss with AI. It's natural. That's the whole point. It's deflationary. It's making things easier and systemizing things. And that ultimately reduces the amount of manual workload that needs to occur, right? But I want to talk a little bit about this because I think this is really important. It's not about taking jobs away necessarily from people. It's about empowering people to do things that are different. And the amount of opportunity within the realm of AI is massive. Like, this is going to be a huge job market. It already is. And right now there's a huge talent gap. So Sameer, can you talk a little bit about that and kind of what you see as it relates to the labor market and kind of AI as a labor force?
Yeah, AI labor market is absolutely crazy right now. You probably already know that, right? I would say, like, engineering talent in general, the demand for that is as high as it could ever be. But even within engineering, I think AI engineers even harder to find. Right? I mean, it requires more additional skill sets on maths besides programming and so forth. And there's just not enough of the AI engineers in the world. So talent market is crazy. Um, but I think one way to address the talent market is upskilling. Right. I think more and more companies and organizations need to think about how they upskill engineers, be it other types of engineers, and give them real opportunities to learn AI and be AI engineers. But this upskilling, I think, is not only it's not only applicable for engineers to get upskilled to become AI engineers, but as we were talking before, how do we upskill HR managers, HR officers, right, and other types of managers across other departments to learn about AI and really upskill their skill sets around applications of AI, and so forth.
I think it's really funny because it's an exact corollary to what Molly and I are trying to do, and which is retain employees and put them on a path for a long and stable career. And by investing in upskilling, not only your employees, but potentially you're helping your vendors or suppliers upskill. It being open to AI and kind of that. As opposed to AI taking or stealing somebody's job, AI empowering somebody to do something different. I think that speaks to the human experience, right? It's all about growth and learning. And that's, we should all be aspiring to do that and to have our employees be doing that. Most people underestimate the power of process. They stick it in the back seat and forget about it until it's too late, but they shouldn't. Processes run the world. Literally all of it. Stocked supermarkets, on-time trains, and safely landing planes are all made possible by systems of intricate, interlinked processes. They are the secret sauce of every great company, and HR teams are responsible for some of the most important processes of all. Onboarding employees, building teams, crafting culture, these vital systems are the lifeblood of every organization. That's why this episode is brought to you by Process Street, the process platform of choice for HR teams around the world. Process Street is a no-code platform that lets you transform your most important HR processes into powerful workflows. Design beautiful employee onboarding experiences with extreme engagement that increases inclusion and reduces turnover. Sync tasks into Slack or Microsoft Teams, automate emails, handoffs, and so much more. Thousands of teams, large and small, trust Process Street to manage their most important people processes, like Salesforce that used Process Street to onboard all of the 3,000 Slack employees after the $27 billion acquisition. You can learn more and sign up for a free account at www.process.st. So is your vision that, that AI, that there's going to be somebody in almost every enterprise that has a job in AI, or is at least working directly with AI as it relates to that enterprise?
Yeah, I would say, more and more companies are creating center of excellence for AI, where they bring about all of the AI engineers in one place and they collaborate across multiple departments. So I think AI touches pretty much every industry, and many different service and product lines, I would say it is natural to think that there will be employees that has to do with something with AI in pretty much most of the large enterprises and medium-sized companies.
Yeah, it's just going to be fascinating. I think, it's, I mean, my experience right now, it's kind of like, I feel like our organization could use AI, but I wouldn't even know where to start. But my guess is that it's probably already being leveraged. It's just I don't necessarily have the visibility to it, or maybe I just don't understand how an algorithm is working in the background as it relates to a back office procedure or something like that. So, I mean, it's already kind of here, isn't it?
It is. And even though you might not see it, as you just mentioned, just using the product lines across many different use cases, be it back office, document storage system. Like there's more and more data document storage system coming where it automatically tags the documents so that it's easy to search later on and it puts them in the right folders and so forth. And you might be using it without even really thinking about it, right? Like a lot of you probably, many people use, for example, Google's email system across organizations, and it has this autocomplete that people just use it naturally on creating these sentences and so forth. And we are probably not even thinking too much about it while we write the emails, but it is here and it's already making a difference in day-to-day workflow for a lot of people.
You know how many times that saved me from putting the wrong grammar in a company-wide email.
For sure.
Thankfully, that exists. Yeah.
Let me tell you.
Sorry, go ahead, Molly.
I really wish I would have paid more attention to this stuff in college. And now I feel like I'm having to oh my gosh, things like cybersecurity and what questions to ask and what am I looking at? And this is all coming full circle into the HR realm. And I need to do better.
Hey, I'm still struggling with, I don't have to double space anymore. That's that. I'm still working on that. I do think it's fascinating. I mean, there's so many applications and it already exists in our world. But I also think that there's an opportunity for us to get much more educated ourselves. And so, as we think about that, just, maybe it's not our core function, but it's an area that we're very interested in. I actually think HR, my theory is AI is going to become more prevalent in HR than we think, because we're getting to a point where we have so much data. We have too much. We don't know what to do with it. And the reality is that the data that we choose to do something with a lot of time has so much bias in it because it's something that we think is important, but we might be looking at a correlation versus causation type of an issue with some of this data, and sometimes it's just very difficult. So I think there's going to be a lot of applications in our space.
Well, and it's not like you said, if you're interested in it, this is something that I am not interested in at all, but it is something that I feel like I have to learn. And I just have to dive in.
Yeah, I think all of us should learn more and more topics related to AI, be it AI for HR, be it AI for other applications. One thing I would say is, as a lot of companies tries to create these upskilling programs for AI, and I think more companies are realizing that, especially for learning AI, just providing an access to online videos is not enough. Because of the complexity of topics, like the companies really needs to make an effort on providing high quality training programs and so forth to be able to teach AI to as many people as possible who may not be core programmers.
Yeah, I think what's so interesting. So, I'm reflecting on an engineering position as an example. This is something where it might take 2 years before I have, a specific type of engineer that's actually competent and able to do their job function, autonomously without having to seek the advice of a mentor or a support person or somebody that has done the job for 30 or 40 years. That's just kind of the industry that I'm in. And it's really, really challenging to find the right individual that's actually willing to spend the time to learn. And that's just kind of a nuance. But I think about, the application of AI and the opportunity that could present us to think about upskilling, shortening a time to competency, putting in a process that means that somebody doesn't have to remember 50 different steps to take before they can actually start to put the theoretical application of what they're thinking about on, into that document or whatever the process is. I just think there's so much there for organizations that are struggling with where to start. Is there typically a natural kind of an entry point to start to look at AI and where to upskill? Automatically, I assume do you start with IT? Do you start with your product experts? What do you see there out in the marketplace? What are companies doing that are trying to solve this problem?
I think a lot of companies are trying to upscale from IT engineering departments, but I think the biggest bang for the buck you get and quick ROI you get is actually provide a very short training program, be a couple of days training programs for the C-suite. I think what ends up happening is, there's usually a bigger mandate to start applying AI in the business because, board may have seen other companies, similar companies using AI, and, then it trickles down saying, ask the engineers, the engineering team gets asked, look, figure out something to do with AI and start applying in the product line, right? And they start to do it, but usually a lot of the junior employees in the engineering team, they don't have enough high-level overview and insight into where the business is heading. What's the high-level strategic decisions that have been made in product and service offering and the evolution of them in a year out or 2 years out and so forth. So that level of vision and insight is with the C-suite. But a lot of times what I've seen is the C-suite is not trained enough on AI, and they're just relying completely on engineers to come up with the problems, come up with the solutions, and so forth. So I think there's a big, big value of providing even 3-day training for the full C-suite on AI for business. And I know it's a lot of time for a full C-suite to be spending 3 days, right? It's like everybody's super busy. But if you take out 3 days for many years ahead on the use of AI, it's absolutely worth it. And that could actually have a much bigger ROI on the business from an upskilling perspective.
I think that's great advice. And I think HR can add a lot of value in some of those pain points that you were talking about. I always tell people I love HR because you're kind of in the middle of it all, right? You see each different department, you understand a little bit of everything, and you can really help be that connector to make the business run more smoothly. Or I just think it's a really good position to be in to add value. So I think HR can take that advice and help connect some of these departments and really show and be that true business partner.
Exactly.
Absolutely. And I think about it, in the context of, what does your learning and development program look like? And are you using a structure and a strategy that's something that you saw 20 years ago, and it's all the same training or training topics? How many L&D programs have an AI curriculum? But how many employees would love to go through an AI curriculum? And, maybe they're not going to be the next leader, but maybe they want to be that individual contributor and they want to be the AI expert, and they could be leading your next innovation division. It's an opportunity for HR to step up and say, hey, what about this? Ask the right question and potentially structure something that could be pretty cool.
I would imagine the younger generations too, when they come into the workforce, that's kind of what they're going to expect.
True. Yeah, I think newer generation, a lot of times they are coming in expecting a lot of learning opportunities across topics and fields they may not be even core part of, right? Like somebody who's joining as a junior HR officer, they might not be doing AI, but they probably would be expecting that HR will start employing AI, and they would want to start learning about AI right off the bat. And if the organization doesn't provide any upskilling opportunities and learning opportunities on AI and its application in HR, there might be issues with retention, for example.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, an example here in my organization. So, we've been trying to systemize administrative processes since, forever. And it's just one of those areas where it's always a component of somebody else's job to do that. And it, what happens is your day job gets in the way. Somebody comes into your office and inevitably, slows down any sort of progress. So I ended up hiring an HR systems specialist, and her function is to systemize HR, right? But that's a great opportunity where, I guarantee you she never took an AI class in college, but I bet she'd love this, and she would probably go through this course and come up with 25 ideas I would never think of, and then figure out how to help us deploy them within our function. So yeah, I just wrote that down on my to-do list. So with that being said, I think some really great things to think about. This is an area that we really haven't explored much on the podcast. So Sameer, I really appreciate you taking some time. I do want to shift gears and get into the Rebel HR Flash Round because I think your perspective is going to be pretty different than many of our guests. So question number 1, where does HR need to rebel?
I would say technology and innovation for some of the steps within the HR processes. I think overall HR processes and the technology involved in it hasn't evolved too much. Still, there's still applicants upload their resumes, they get screened, they get interviews, and so forth, right? And even, for example, in the screening process, so many people apply for very few jobs, right? Like when we post a job opening, we get hundreds and hundreds of applicants, and there's only enough resources to interview maybe 5 or 10. And the condensation of overall personality and skill set in one piece of paper on one page is not enough to really show how good a person might be. So, for example, there could be an innovation of AI combined with virtual reality, where 95% of people get interviewed by an AI HR recruiting interviewer, where the machine is able to really get the nuance of the personality of the person, the applicant, beyond just what's listed in the resume, right? So I think there needs to be more technological innovation in HR processes, and it could even start with, like I said, a screening process where AI avatar along with virtual reality could be interviewing 90% of the candidate.
Absolutely. I think there's so much opportunity there. And that's something that absolutely, HR has to be, at the forefront of that decision-making process and owning some of that. So question number 2, who should we be listening to?
We should be listening to our employees. The company should be listening to the employees, and especially, there's with COVID and the newer generation, a lot of employees have a certain level of expectation on what company does for the employees and what are the expectations, be it, like we talked about before, on the training programs within the company, from learning opportunities and upskilling opportunities. And I think companies need to spend a lot more time listening to the employees on what they're asking for and what would make them happy and how they are thinking about the ways to contribute towards the company. And I think many organizations don't do enough. Besides sending surveys once in a while, there should be a systematic way of really, really listening to the employees.
I think that's a great example. That's a whole nother application we haven't even talked about with AI, right? It's that how do you allow people to surface questions, concerns, what have you, and put that into systematic protocol so that you can actually address the root cause of some of the concerns and find, common themes, right?
Yeah.
So I'm nerding out again. I'm going back to the Star Wars, reference again. All right. Last question here. How can our listeners connect with you and learn more about some of the work you're doing?
They can connect with me through LinkedIn, Sameer Maskey, linkedin.com/Sameer Maskey, or Twitter. Sameer Maskey is my handle, or my email is maskey@fusemachines.com. Any of those channels would work, and I will respond right back.
Absolutely. And we'll have that in the show notes. We'll also have a link to fusemachines.com. There's a bunch of really great curriculum there. If you are thinking about, an L&D program, or maybe you just want to learn yourself so that you become an educated HR professional for the future of what this looks like for yourself or for your organization, check it out. Some pretty cool stuff out there. I already know, double of what I knew before this discussion just in researching for this. So I appreciate that, Sameer. And I do want to thank you. I know a part of what, your goal, your function is at Fusemachines is really to democratize AI education and to really, truly, embrace AI for the future to make the world a better place. So I thank you for that mission and the work you're doing there.
Thank you so much.
With that being said, that's all that we have for you today. Thank you so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. You too.
All right. That does it for the Rebel HR podcast. Big thank you to our guests. Follow us on Facebook at Rebel HR Podcast, Twitter at Rebel HR Guy, or see our website at rebelhumanresources.com. The views and opinions expressed by Rebel HR Podcast are those of the authors and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any of the organizations that we represent. No animals were harmed during the filming of this podcast.
Baby.